what built college football and what built collegiate athletics. The regional rivalries are super important to that fandom and that experience and that excitement. And I want to preserve that the best I can and create new rivalries as well as we move forward. And
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option. I am your host, Yogi Roth. Thank you for spending time with us this week. Looking forward to the conversation and sharing it with you because it's one that I was looking forward to this entire off season. And for fans in Pac-12 football and really all of college football on how you navigate change, you're going to enjoy today's conversation. It's with the athletics director at Oregon State University, Scott Barnes. Now, I've known Scott Barnes for over a decade now. Last week, we were able to catch up and talk about what it's like to lead an institution, an athletic department, through the last few years of the Pac-12, from when it dramatically changed. We know what that was like. We've talked about that many times on this show. Also, what it's like being in relative limbo, and then the rebuild of what the Pac-12 is now and where he stands. Because one steady through it all has been Scott Barnes. Our conversation last week was full of depth, insight, vulnerability, and of course, leadership traits, because you need those to persevere through anything that is challenging. I think you'll really enjoy today's conversation. As always, every one of our conversations are presented by our founding sponsor, 76, fueling all of these conversations, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. If you've missed any past episodes, just go to yoption.com or check us out on YouTube. People like Peyton Manning. Yes, Peyton Manning, he's within that thread as well. I think you'll enjoy that conversation, maybe as much as you'll enjoy today's conversation. So let's get right to it. Oregon State's athletics director, Scott Barnes. So with that, we welcome in Scott Barnes. How you doing? And thanks for joining the show.
great to see you as always. We are overall the big picture things. We are very excited about our future, and doing well. It's that time of year. We're a quarter school, so students haven't quite got to campus, but all of our student athletes are here, and it's go time, Yogi.
I love that. Okay, so you and I have had many conversations over the years. I cannot believe we have not talked about you playing basketball in Germany, because I'm a big international guy. Like I love traveling the world. Tell me about how the experience of seeing sport overseas has allowed you to see sport through the lens in which you do now as a leader at Oregon State.
That's an incredible question. First of all, I'm short-lived. Got out of a free agent trial with the Clippers, injured, went over to Germany on crutches, and came home on crutches. And the duration was about 6 months. But I'll tell you what's really important about your question is a lot of what's happened today. When you think about the model, the collegiate model, and where it's going, and there, you can think about a lot of things, but I think about the collegiate model in a couple of ways, and I want to compare that to what's happened in Europe, because we're very unique here. In Europe, what we had was, everything's detached from the university setting. They don't commingle, and there's always positives and negatives to all of that. But what's been so exciting over the years to see in the model that we built is developing young men and women, CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. 75% of Olympians that you see come out of the collegiate model. The list goes on and on, and so we're drifting away from that in terms of what's being built now with not just rev share NIL, but the pendulum as it continues to swing. And so what is interesting is that when you think about your experiences, although short-lived in Europe, you treasure what you have. You think about, my goodness, that's great, but what we have is special in the world. And so to hang on to that while we adapt and adjust to the conditions of the marketplace today is really important. Because in a way, Yogi, I feel a little bit like we're legislating life lessons out of college athletics. Why do I say that? Things like the transfer portal with multiple windows, transfer multiple times a year, making it so easy to pack up and leave that the life lessons that you and I were used to, are sticking it out where you are, overcoming adversity, discipline, competition, which when you're in the job market 10 years after you leave your sport, those are really important things. And so we got to find a different way to deliver those, because instead of a 4 or 5 year opportunity, it's many of our student athletes are here for a year and gone. So how do we keep those life lessons in this new era, in this new model?
That's a cool answer. One of the things that stood out to me is the quote you said of treasuring what you have. I want to. Well, we're going to get to present day life right now in Corvallis within the Pac-12, but I want to go back if you can, because it triggered this thought for me, and maybe a memory for you. You go to April of 2023, and you're in Fresno being honored, and you have a medical procedure where all of a sudden a blood clot pops up, and what is next for you, right? You were about to win an award and you found yourself in the emergency room. I'm curious for you, when you talk about treasuring what you have, when you think back to that moment, then a couple months later, the Pac 12, as most knew it for over 100 years, dramatically changed shape. And now to where we sit today, I wonder how that phrase lands on you based on your last 2+ years.
A lot coming at us, and at once, and that the health problem that I had, and continue to monitor, obviously was ill-timed in many ways. Number one, I was a showstopper at that event, obviously, and we went from there. But those are things that in your life, when it brings a different perspective. And so, it reminds me a little bit about a book I read recently called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and a Ryan Holiday book. It sounds like you're familiar with it. That's kind of the life we're living right now. Is how do you take this perceived obstacle, whether it's my health issue or the implosion of the Pac-12, and turn it into a positive? How do you look at it in a way that says, how do we get the most out of this and create a new beginning that is going to be awesome? And so that's sort of been my mindset. I cherish every day. Since my health issue, I think I've got a different perspective in terms of the gift I've been given to live, every day, and I appreciate that. And then, we're a lot of us are built a little different in this space, where when this obstacle comes, or this challenge that we saw in the breakup of the Pac-12, it creates a newfound energy to try to solve it. Right? You get invigorated in a way, and energized in a way maybe that you weren't, because there all of a sudden you've got this huge obstacle that you got to find an opportunity in.
Yeah, well, the obstacle is the way. I love that book and what Ryan does. I read The Daily Dad every day. That's like one of my favorite books
Oh,
of
nice.
all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he has written as well. You have been, to me, a stalwart in terms of a leader throughout this, right? You referenced it was two schools, and then you just navigate a lot. And then Teresa Gould came in as a commissioner. In a way, you rebuilt this thing. Before we get into that, I want to know, like, how might you describe your leadership style? Because I felt it from down here in Southern California, and it felt as though like it resonated around the country once an obstacle did show up.
Well, I think the one thing that I've carried in my career is that, there's an opportunity in everything. You try to find that opportunity, and then you don't panic, and you find, as you're looking for those opportunities, you take a methodical approach, you take a balanced approach to what you're doing, because we have, in this business in particular, we have so many highs and lows that you can run out of gas pretty quick if you're riding the highs and lows at the extreme. And so, that's part of it. The other part of it is, I hope I'm bringing value to the people around me as a leader, and that, you know if you're in an orchestra, you can be the conductor or you can be the soloist. And you can be a soloist leader and just be an awesome leader that is direct and moving things forward, but you're not necessarily bringing value to those around you. A conductor, on the other hand, is bringing value to those around you. And I cherish the team I've got, and enlisting them and empowering them, better word, to do the job. So as we think about the path forward, it's all hands on deck every day, and empowering them to do those things. So those are some sort of tenets of maybe how I've approached things over the years.
The conductor, I'm going to steal that. I love that on so many layers and levels. One thing that I feel is often true in athletic departments when you bring in people from a bunch of different areas, everybody's the conductor of their own orchestra. And it's hard to be on the same page and play the same sheet music. You got Teresa Gould kind of overseeing this league, right, as the commissioner of it. You have a bunch of athletic directors that are also serving their teams, their coaches, their constituents, their community. What have you observed in the rebuild, the reimagined Pac-12 with Teresa Gould and yourself as really the two people who've seen it all now that have seats at the table and have had seats at the table for a long time when it comes to camaraderie, when it comes to shared leadership, when it comes to just saying, you know what, it might not be perfect for me, but it might be a little better for you here. Like, how have you seen the navigation of different leadership styles at the table?
Yeah, Yogi, it's interesting because when you bring the new group together, you're all working towards a common goal, and yet you have your own interest to protect as a university. So you spend some time in the negotiating stages, right, and in moving through that. And to your point, you sort of have to give up some things to get some things done. And I think finding that path, I like how this group of athletic directors and presidents came together to get the deal done, consummate our future, and so not everything was perfect, and nor did we agree on every detail, and but we found a way, and once we found that way, now you think about what we have. I couldn't be more excited about what we've built. And this is the first big giant bite of that apple. There'll be more bites of the apple, but it's exciting to think about what we can do with what we have. And there's a lot of metrics to support what we have is that fifth spot. It's closer to the ACC and the Big 12 than it is any group of five in terms of what we have in terms of success on the field of football and basketball, eyeballs on televisions, brand awareness, all of that. And so, how do we leverage this to even greater things?
As I would read in the news and hear from friends, past colleagues, etc., of like the small wins along the way, I just kind of saw a movie in my eyes of whether it was, hey, Washington State or Oregon State, we're staying together. When then all of a sudden, a year ago, almost to the day, here comes the announcement of all these other schools. Like, what was it like to be in, the bunker, if you will, of the rebuild? Of all right, let's go think a little differently. Let's go be challengers and keep this thing moving and maybe make it, to your point, something really special.
It was it evolved, right? I mean, the first thing is all of a sudden you lose, 10 members of the Pac-12. You have no support really for the Pac-12 when it blew up, or very little. So you're on your own. You're sort of de facto commissioner until Teresa came later, and so you're trying to build a schedule. You're trying to build a football schedule. You're trying to find a home for a period of time. So there's a heightened sense of urgency and all that, and trying to make that work, right, and get that in place. And then as you move forward, as you get your feet underneath you, and you find your way. We did our first media deal, basically on our own. Last year's media deal, Pac-12 came in late, and T was on board, and then we've rolled from there, and she's been excellent. It's been what's been really gratifying is just to see the help and the partnership come, and not just the partnership from the conference, but the partnership from the others who are in many ways like-minded, growth mode, that challenger brand that you mentioned, and working towards a future together. So it's been a evolution process to get to where we are, from not having anything to work with, including people to play, to a position now of strength, of real strength.
I got to just imagine like here's this brand who's got that has tremendous brand equity as you know, and you're trying to not necessarily just be another version of a conference but do things differently. What was the tension like of doing things like we've done forever or conferences have done forever, and or taking risks, being bold, and being in the middle of that, and of course living it day to day as well?
Yeah, it's what I like about this group is we thought about innovation and adapting to today's marketplace and all those things, and we continue to evolve in terms of that. We all have a mindset. Look, we can't be risk averse in this market. We can, and even though that's kind of how higher ed is built, a lot of our institutions are built that way. We've got to think differently, and so it's been energizing to uh, be with colleagues and a commissioner who all are like-minded, and I've used that term before, but in this regard, and you know, calculated, roll the dice in some instances, and see what we get. We've got a whiteboard to work from, and let's draw it up the way we want. Um, is kind of how I look at it.
I can only imagine how much, when you look back on it, how proud you are of where it sits today, and and how much fun it has been to do something like this with all the things you've done in your career. When you walk around Corvallis, it's got one of my favorite, coffee shops, yoga studios. Like I haven't been there in a little over a year, and I need to get back because I love going there. What has it been like talking to alums and fans as they've watched this thing go from a moment where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen next, to, oh, it's kind of cool. Like to your point of being the fifth conference in that regard.
It's interesting when all this fell apart. You start scenario planning, and you've got to. At the end of the day, you're accountable to your budget and revenues and where you sit at the end. So we started scenario planning, and we had no idea how our alumni, our fans, would respond. So we said, I think what we probably need to do is build a revenue model that's a decrease of 30% the first year, because we're not playing the same Pac-12 schedule. We're not doing the same thing, so we don't know how our alumni are going to respond. So we better make sure we aren't caught off guard. And lo and behold, Yogi, that wasn't the case at all. We not only sort of met our revenue projections from the old Pac-12, but we set records in many sports in terms of attendance, and that's sort of the response that we've seen when you ask what it's like and what are our alumni talking about saying. They take great pride in what we've done. Beavers, hey, we are going to overcome with grit and tenacity, and we're gonna keep grinding. And they have taken pride in what we've built. They see that we've preserved the Pac-12, albeit a different Pac-12, but we've preserved it, and they're really excited. So I'm super proud and super grateful of what our Beaver Nation has done in just jumping on board with the fight. They appreciate the fight, and they've been in it with us.
I've always felt that the athletes that have performed at Oregon State have also appreciated that fight. Like you kind of had to have a little bit of chip on your shoulder. Like I'm seeing faces like Sean Mannion right now. I'm seeing Brandon Cooks. I'm seeing Malik Murphy, guy I've known for a long time as well. What have you noticed about the student athletes? Like have they settled into, all right, this is what the future is. This is pretty cool from your purview.
Yeah, they have, because you know what the unknown is really scary, for folks, right? Particularly our student athletes who signed up for something different, right? Many of them, and so clarity was really important. And once we got clarity, whether it's the 2 year work with the WCC, and really appreciate Stu Jackson, and that's worked out so well. And then we press go on the new Pac-12 July 1 of 2026. All of our student athletes know the plan, and they're excited because there's opportunity in it as well. Even before we get there, to win championships. We've won more championships last year in league play than we have in a long time, and so they're taking that as an opportunity.
Yeah, that's really cool. When I think about your team and when I talk to people around the country, I'm always reminding them like, no, Oregon State, they can compete on every front, whether that's NIL, you've seen that with athletes coming in, whether it's the transfer portal, you've seen a bunch come in, etc. What would you hope that you could share about the state of your athletic department with others around the country, and specifically in college football season, maybe tailor it towards that of, hey, this is our reality as we keep moving forward, and it's why this place is so attractive.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's so what's the differentiator for us? And it is that type of student athlete that's wants to be in the fight. That perhaps, although we're relevant and we've shown that and more in terms of rev share and NIL, not so sure if that's the first thing on your mind and the absolute priority. That maybe you're not a fit here. But if you want to be the best athlete and the best person you can be, we got a bunch of coaches who are going to help you put yourself in an awesome spot for your future. And we're going to win championships, and we're going to do it in a way that builds you. We talk about that in a lot of different ways, but it's the ability to help you succeed in life generally, and it starts with the classroom and on the field. But there's so many more pieces to it than that. And that student athlete development aspect of what we do, we're really proud of. We hang our hat in that, and we deliver annually on that. So those are things that put us in I think a position that that creates even more opportunity for a student athlete. And it's and oh, by the way, we will stay relevant and grow in the rev share and the NIL. It's a priority for all of us, and we're doing that. It's evolving, and our goal is in football is to win at the highest level, and it is the same in all our other sports. And we have a group of coaches that are finding ways to do that, even given the challenges that we've had.
Yeah, I feel like recruits, they all kind of want the same thing. They want to win, they want to play, they want to get paid, like in some order, but really the best ones I found it is in that order.
Yeah,
Win, get on the biggest stage, to your point of being the fifth conference. You have an opportunity to do that with where we sit and where we may be in the playoff. Play and compete, opportunity exists. And then you look at, can you compete in the world that you just referenced? I wonder how you feel about like student athlete, because I feel like it's a term that has evolved tremendously over time, just based on what you said off the top of this thing. Some are coming for a year, some are coming for 7. We got some athletes that have been there for 8 or 9 years that still in major college football. And I think two things can be true. Like a lot of the student athletes I talk to, that once the dust settles, they want to grow and develop and walk a campus and find lifelong friends. Like in your time amid, a transient nature in college athletics and on your campus, have you netted out of like maybe a redefined version of student athlete?
yeah, it's an excellent question, and it sort of starts with, all right, if we're truly developing the holistic person, and we've got a system built to do that over a 5 year period of time. How do we change that and meet the needs for student athletes that may only be here a year? And so academic primacy continues to be a priority in the student athlete. And if the pendulum swings too much further, it may not be, but it still is. And I think things like federal legislation, the SCORE Act isn't perfect, but it does codify sort of this notion that a student athlete is not an employee, and those things matter. But how do we then take the new model, and knowing that a student athlete may only be here a year, and deliver on our promise of a holistic experience in a short period of time? And so doing that differently and preserving that student athlete. But hey, we are still the only model in the world that combines higher education with a elite competitive athlete program, and they go together. And there's a lot you lose when they're not together. And so, how do we preserve that in some way, adjusting to the new norm, adjusting to the market conditions, but still delivering? And so,
Yeah.
yes, student athlete. I think we continue to use um, that moniker, and we mean it. And until this thing shifts completely a different direction, that is still critical and important.
Go here, go there, go anywhere with 76.
Yeah. Well, I know in your community, what also is important is keeping key things consistent. On September 20th, it's the 129th meeting, Oregon State and the Oregon Ducks on the football field. Kind of curious, like when you look at the future of this matchup, where you net out and what this game means to your university and your community, and maybe where it stands. If you have an update on that.
Yeah, first of all, I just think uh, what built college football and what built collegiate athletics, regional rivalries are super important to that fandom and that experience and that excitement. And I want to preserve that the best I can and create new rivalries as well as we move forward. And in a day and age, Yogi, when I'm sitting at the Cal game a year ago and I'm looking out the back window of my suite and I'm looking at the Pacific Ocean and I look at the field and I see the ACC logo. I'm thinking, what's come of us here? So regional play and rivalries in all sports, but particularly football, are important. So we're going to find a way to preserve that. Working on it right now with Oregon. And now the challenge is, people say, well, how can you compete? Well, you know what? Prior to even revenue share and NIL, there's always been gaps, and you always find a way. And the gaps are wider, sure, but at some point the laws of diminishing return affect that too. So how do we find a way to compete in where we're at? And there's a place for rivalries in college football. It should to lose those is I think a missed opportunity, and we'll continue to preserve ours the best we can. And I think we'll have some news on that down the line.
Okay, cool. Well, let us know. We appreciate that and your candor and time. It's been a blast getting to know you over the decades that we've known each other, and also watching this from afar and being close enough to know that these rebuild, like you got to go compete and be creative and be bold and be a challenger and be emotionally connected to your athletes and your school. Like there's a lot going on there. So before we cut you loose, I'm just kind of curious, like, what is it like to be you knowing what's coming in January 26 and this league being fully formed?
Yeah, it's just a level of excitement, and I'll never miss having to build an independent football schedule. So to have all those baselines, and then just to take what we've built together and grow it over the next few years is going to be super exciting. There's another move or two for us for sure, because collegiate athletic landscape is just a dynamic place, and there'll be other openings and other opportunities to bring even more value into what we're building here. So that's invigorating. That's exciting for us to see what the future holds.
I like it. Another move or two. All right, we'll be tuned into that. We'll be watching you all season as well. Scott, thank you for the time. I know you're a busy man, but wanted to get you on this show for a while now, and just major applause. I hear from Oregon State fans all the time, let alone fans of just the sport. And I said it last year, and I'll say it again. I think the country's rooting for the Beavs and the Cougs, let alone the new Pac-12. And a big reason is the leadership of you at Washington State and, of course, Teresa Gould. So thanks for the time, man.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Yogi. We'll see you again soon. Go Beavs.
Go Beavs. You got it, man. It's the Afterglow. Hello, hello. Jim Thornby there, Yogi Roth here. That was Scott Barnes. We talked to him last week. We know there's a huge game upcoming this week. Oregon State looking for their first win against their rival, the Oregon Ducks. Called that game many times, Jim. We'll get into that in a minute. But I'm curious, you've been around Scott Barnes a bunch as well. What was some of your biggest takeaways from the conversation presented by our founding sponsor, 76?
Well, I just think it's cool because he has such a unique connection now to so many of these future of the Pac-12. It's almost like a Scott Barnes collection of school. Obviously, Oregon State, is his current current job, but he is the former athletic director at Utah State, He was there for several years. He played basketball at Fresno State. He's still in the top 10, I believe, in career blocks in Fresno State basketball. And then he was born in Spokane, grew up there, didn't go to high school there. He moved way before there. And it was funny because after, I think it was either right before or after we did the interview, I asked him, I'm like, you were there around the same time as John Stockton. Like, did you guys ever battle against each other? And he was like, oh, he goes, well, I would go back during the summers, and me and him would like run open gyms in Spokane. So it's just pretty funny, like all these connections that he has to these universities that will become the future of the Pac-12 here starting next summer.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Just to be clear, you're not alluding to Pitt coming to the Pac-12 because he
Yes.
did spend some time there.
Not-
Yeah. We're not breaking that kind of news, folks. Yeah. Which would just be fun, just to get the
For you,
trips
yeah.
out there. Yeah. I was really impressed with just his leadership style. I have always been. Whether when he was at Pitt or Utah State, or when he came onto the scene at Oregon State and really became a part of the fabric of our lives at the time, and then throughout everything that Teresa Gould has had to navigate. Remember when everything adjusted, if you want to use that word, everything changed. He described it well in our conversation. It was him, it was Teresa, it was Pat Chun, and they were fighting on behalf of the league. Think of the things they did. They made sure that they pushed to keep Pac-12 enterprises, which is becoming a tremendously fruitful asset to the Pac-12 conference and many other conferences and networks in terms of the amount of content that they're producing, led by Michael Molinari and company. So I just think overall, like the vision that he's had, and then the steady hand amid all of this. Like, I heard this line from Jared Goff over the summer. He said a speaker came in once to the Lions and said, "You're in a storm or you're running towards one." And at Oregon State, they've been in one for a while. And for him to be so steady through his own, and I appreciated his vulnerability, Jim, of what he went through health-wise. It's been very public around it, but I think there's a lesson there for leaders in high stressful jobs and lifestyles and worlds where like you're being asked to do a lot. He was able to just, adjust his own path and then be steady. And I always love seeing him, love having him on. We're trying to get him on for a while. And we get to share that conversation that we did a week ago with all of you now here in advance of the Oregon State game. So let's pivot to that, shall we, Jim? We got rivalries. We got the Apple Cup. Last year, John Mateer, we all remember the end of that game with the option to the short side of the field and stuffed by the Washington State defense. They win that game in Seattle in the Seahawks Stadium. Now we got it in Pullman.
In neutral field.
Yeah, that's right, a neutral field. But now at least
air quotes,
right?
for those of you that are only listening and not seeing the video there.
But we have it, and I think that's the point. I think it's we know that it's great for not only the regions, the states. I think it's great for college football. Our friend John Canzano alluded to a potential feature on Oregon State. Potentially, it might be coming up as well on game day this week. We'll see if that comes to fruition as well. So what do you think about that? These two rivalry games, second year in a row. Earlier on in the season, I've been a part of these games as a broadcaster for many years. You've been a part of them as a producer. What's your thoughts heading into rivalry week?
Well, we'll start with the uncivilness in the state of Oregon and just where these two programs are right now. Beavs, we knew this year would be tough because that schedule that they had was going to be tough. Neither one of us, I think, thought that this would be where th're at right now, being 0-3, first time since 2011. They were down 38-0 in that Texas Tech game after three quarters. Obviously, Texas Tech is a team that has poured a lot of money and resources into that program in the last year. We saw the Stanford transfer, David Bailey, in that, balling out in that game. But it was just weird because you saw what Oregon State has done the last few years, been really a ground heavy team. Malik Murphy played decently in this game over the weekend. Had 281 yards, 2 scores, but he had 2 picks. The Beavs were outgained by over 300 yards in that game. They only had 8 yards rushing on 22 attempts. Hankerson was pretty much locked up. It was the largest yardage deficit they've had since 2018. So it'll be interesting to see. I think obviously this will be a very motivated team in the Beavs because they need this win to kind of really get back into a good headspace for where they're at. Because I'm sure right now it's probably a struggle for them.
We hear about rivalries usually in late November. And, in my first year in the Big Ten, and look, if you follow college football, you know what Ohio State and Michigan is. And there's always a question circulating among those fan bases. Would you rather beat your rival or go undefeated and win the national title? Which sounds ridiculous. But if you look at this game that you're referencing in Oregon State, if you said to the Beavs, would you rather win this game or win out after this game? I think they might choose win this game. I mean, I know that sounds crazy. And I know the staff is probably, they want to do both, right? Like who doesn't? But you're right. This is a moment. And I don't think Oregon is going to take the Beavs lightly. Know Dan Lanning too well about that. So I look forward to watching this game. I think for Oregon State to have a chance, they got to get some explosive plays. Can they confuse Dante Moore into a couple turnovers? Trent Bray, his defensive acumen is really high. So he'll have a plan. They got to stop the run, though. If they can slow down the run game, they can confuse Dante Moore, get a little help. Who knows what'll happen in this one. Wazoo's coming off a tough weekend. So, again, it's in Pullman. So there's an opportunity, there's an advantage there, of course. It's always a crazy place to play. It's the first time for this staff and this regime to go through this rivalry game. I go back to the same thing. Can you stop the run? If Washington State can slow down the run game, they'll give themselves a chance. But what's going on at quarterback there? Can they move the football? You're right. Both of these teams, the two in the Pac-12 this year, have a lot of questions that need to be answered. And they'll get this huge opportunity. One day game, one night game. It'll be fun. I got an early one. So by the time my game is done, the Oregon game will be over with as well. But I'll be sure on my flight home from Madison, I'll be glued to that Apple Cup, man.
Well, it's interesting because that Washington State game this past weekend is one of the most inexplicable outcomes so far of the season, because you saw the week before.
Yeah.
Well, we knew that Washington State was going to be kind of a mystery this year. New coach, all sorts of new players coming in from whatever. We knew it was going to take some time to develop. But last week, they kind of put it on San Diego State, 36-13, and you're like, okay, they got it rolling here. Obviously, going on the road is never easy, but 59-10 at North Texas. I looked it up. It was their worst loss since 2008. It's their largest scoring deficit ever to a non-Power 5 school. The only time they've ever even lost to another Power 5 school or non-Power 5 school by 30 or more points was back in 1955 when they had a 30-0 loss to Pacific. And obviously that is such a different world of college football to think of the 1955 Pacific team. So it's just you're thinking man, what happened? Obviously, they turned the ball over 5 times. 3 of them were interceptions by Jackson Potter. Zevi Eckhouse, who played great in the bowl game last year and had not played in the first 2 games. He got in at the end of the game. I think he was 7 of 10 passing. He got a rush touchdown in the last 2 minutes. So I don't know if that means that they're going to maybe give him some more run this week. But it was really such a surprising outcome. Not necessarily that they lost, because again, you're going on the road to North Texas. Is a decent team, but just the nature of it, and watching that first half, almost anything that could go wrong did. Yeah. And it's just one of those games where you kind of almost have to just flush it and move on.
No, for both of the opponents, both for Oregon State, Washington State.